Welcome to Nighttime Narrative, where the world slows down and your thoughts begin to drift. Here, beneath a sky full of stars, stories come alive, not with noise, but with silence, not with speed, but with stillness. Close your eyes, if you wish, or let them wander with the candlelight. Let each word become a soft step across the bridge between waking and dreaming. In this quiet space, the past whispers, the future hums, and the present gently breathes. You're safe here. You're home in the hush. And now, let the story begin. There is a place the wind speaks of, far beyond the busy lands and noisy clocks, a place where time flows like a lazy stream and dreams drift gently on the breeze. It sits nestled between two mossy hills, right at the bend of a glowing river. By day, it's hidden under flowering vines and soft mist. But by night, when the moon is full and the stars lean a little closer to the earth, the little cottage awakens with a golden glow. No one really knows who built it. Some say the cottage grew there, like a tree. Others believe it appeared when someone made a wish so kind, the world wanted to grant it a home. The river beside it hums softly as it flows, turning into a waterfall that glows with quiet light. Fireflies float in gentle swirls, and the garden is always full of sweet-scented blooms, even in the middle of winter. Inside the cottage lives an old cat named Thistle. Thistle isn't just any cat. He wears a tiny scarf around his neck, knitted from threads of moonlight and memory. And every night, when the stars are high and the fire crackles low, Thistle prepares a cup of chamomile tea and curls up on the windowsill. He watches the waterfall shimmer. He listens to the river's whispers. And sometimes, when the air is still and the world is listening, he tells a story. To no one in particular. Or maybe to everyone. Tonight, as the lantern outside swayed gently and the sky turned a deep velvet blue, Thistle opened his eyes and stretched. "Well," he murmured, his voice barely louder than a purr, "it's a good night for a tale, isn't it?" He leapt down from the windowsill and padded softly to the big armchair by the fire. There, he lit a single floating candle, one that danced above the table like a curious star. And then he began. A long time ago, Thistle began, his eyes gleaming in the candlelight. There was a small cloud who didn't want to float like the others. His name was Nim. Now, Nim was fluffier than most clouds, soft and round like a marshmallow warmed by the sun. But while other clouds drifted lazily through the sky, Nim always looked down. Down at the trees. Down at the rivers. Down at the tiny roofs of cottages tucked in valleys. He didn't want to be up high. He wanted to visit the earth. One day, Thistle said, Nim made a wish. He closed his little cloud eyes, held his breath, as much as clouds can, and whispered, I wish I could land, just for a little while. The wind, usually too busy to listen, happened to hear him that day. And because Nim's wish was gentle and kind, the wind paused, and gently guided Nim down, 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 until he landed right on the rooftop of a little cottage by a glowing river. Yes, this cottage. Thistle glanced at the ceiling with a soft smile. Nim stayed there for one full day and night, he continued. And in that time, he discovered things clouds never knew. He felt the warmth of fresh bread baking. He smelled lavender in the garden. He listened to the soft splash of fish in the river. And just before morning, he curled up on the roof and watched the stars fade into a golden sky. But before he left, Nim wanted to give something in return. So he gathered a piece of himself, a tiny puff of his cloud heart, and let it float down the chimney. When the owner of the cottage woke up, they found a soft cushion in the shape of a sleeping cloud, still faintly warm, sitting by the fireplace. And stitched into it, with golden thread, were the words, Thank you for letting me feel the earth. Thistle's voice became quieter, almost like a whisper now. And so, he finished, curling his tail around his paws. Whenever a soft wind passes through the rafters at night, I wonder, maybe Nim still visits. The candle flickered. Outside, the river laughed softly against the stones. And in the warmth of the cottage, the fire hummed a lullaby. Just as Thistle let out a slow, satisfied sigh and sipped the last bit of his chamomile tea, there was a sound. Tap, tap, tap. 3 gentle knocks on the wooden door. Now, the cottage rarely had visitors. Most who passed by in the daylight mist didn't even know it existed. But Thistle wasn't surprised. He only tilted his head and murmured, Well, it is a night for stories. Perhaps this one is just beginning. He padded across the soft wooden floor and opened the door without a creak. Outside stood a small owl, no taller than a teacup, with round golden eyes and feathers the color of midnight snow. She wore a tiny satchel made of bark and moss, and when she spoke, her voice was a quiet breeze through pine needles. Is this the cottage where stories rest? She asked. Thistle gave a soft nod. It is. The owl blinked once, slowly. Then I've come to leave one behind. He stepped aside, inviting her in. She fluttered onto the windowsill where he'd just been sitting. From her satchel, she pulled out a single feather, soft and shimmering faintly, as if it held light within it. She placed it gently on the table. This is from a dream I forgot, she said. But I remember how it felt. Safe. Warm. Like home. I thought, maybe it belongs here now. Thistle purred. All lost dreams find their way here. You've done well to bring it. They sat together in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, just full of unspoken kindness. Then Thistle opened a little drawer beneath the table and took out a silver thread, no thicker than a strand of hair. He tied it around the dream feather. With a single breath, he blew it toward the fireplace. The feather floated, slowly, gently, before settling above the flames, where it shimmered once, then vanished into the warmth, like a star finding its sky again. The owl watched with wide eyes. And then, without another word, she nodded her little head, fluttered back outside, and disappeared into the mist. Thistle stood at the door a moment longer, watching the ripples in the river catch moonlight. Then he whispered. One more dream returned. One more peace restored. He closed the door. And somewhere deep in the hills, a tiny wind carried the story onward. The next morning arrived the way it always did near the cottage, with golden light filtering softly through the mist, and the gentle burble of the waterfall echoing like a lullaby still half awake. Thistle, still wrapped in his moonlight scarf, stepped out onto the mossy stone porch. He took a deep breath. The air smelled of rosemary and river spray. The kind of air that made you want to hum without knowing why. Today, however, something felt curious. The waterfall was singing. Not just its usual hush-hush tune, but a faint melody, like someone humming from deep within the water. Thistle tilted his head. He said, mostly to the sky. That's new. Without hurry, he padded over to the edge of the river, where smooth stones glistened under a curtain of falling water. He stepped carefully, his paws never making a sound, until he reached the back of the waterfall, a hidden nook behind the veil. And there, nestled in a shallow pool where the sun barely touched, was a stone that glowed. Not brightly. Just a soft pulse, like a heartbeat. It was shaped like a tear, perfectly smooth, but its surface shimmered in colors Thistle couldn't name. He reached out a paw to touch it. The moment he did, the waterfall's song paused. And in the silence, a voice spoke, not out loud, but gently, inside his chest. Thank you for remembering me. Thistle didn't move. He simply listened. I've been waiting in this water, forgotten by time, left behind by stars. But your stories, they reached me. Thistle, who never rushed magic, sat beside the stone. He didn't ask who the voice belonged to, or what the glowing meant. He only whispered, "You're home now." The stone shimmered once more. Then, slowly, the water around it stilled, and the singing faded into a sigh. Thistle wrapped the stone in a dry leaf, gently tucked it in the fold of his scarf, and made his way back to the cottage. That evening, as dusk painted the sky in sleepy violets, he placed the stone on the mantel above the fire. It pulsed once, warmly. A soft breeze passed through the room, not from the window, not from the door, but from somewhere older, somewhere deeper. Thistle smiled. Tonight, it would be the stone's turn to tell a story. As the room darkened and stars blinked awake outside, Thistle lit a single candle. The flame flickered gently, casting a golden glow on the curious tear-shaped stone resting on the mantel. And then, it began. Not with words, but with images. Thistle closed his eyes, and the fire's crackling faded into a hush. In his mind, he saw a sky, vast, deep, and scattered with silver birds made of light. They flew through the night, not with wings, but on gentle arcs of stardust. And among them floated a small being, neither bird nor star, but something in between. Her name was Lyra. Lyra was a keeper of forgotten songs. She drifted from one corner of the cosmos to the next, collecting hums and lullabies that had been left behind, a sailor's tune whispered to the sea, a mother's hum beneath a willow tree, a child's giggle turned into melody during a dream. Each song she gathered turned into a drop of light in her satchel. But one day, as she flew too close to the folds of time, a storm swept through, not a storm of wind or rain, but one of silence. It swallowed her. Her song scattered across the universe. And Lyra, little, glowing Lyra, fell, not down, but inward. Through layers of quiet. Through centuries of stillness. Until she landed, gently, in a pool beneath a waterfall on a quiet planet beside a forgotten river. She became the stone. The last memory of her still hummed within its core, hoping someone, anyone, would tell stories again, stories filled with rhythm, breath, and warmth. And then Thistle came. He told stories every night. And with each word, each whisper, he unknowingly reached her. Now, her voice returned, not loudly, but softly, through the candlelight. "If you wish, I can teach you one of my songs," she said. Thistle nodded once, and the candle flame tilted slightly, as if bowing. A melody filled the room. No instrument played it. No voice sang it. Yet it was there, a hush between the heartbeat and the stars. Thistle, eyes half closed, sat perfectly still. And the little cottage, hidden in the mist by the glowing river, held its breath to listen. The melody wove through the air, a quiet vibration that seemed to pulse with the very rhythm of the world itself. It was not a tune one could hold with their hands, nor could it be captured in any words. It was a song that lived in the space between moments, in the sliver of time where thought and heart meet. As the music filled the room, Thistle felt a weight lifting from his chest, as if the song were untangling the knots of his own quiet soul. He could feel the rhythm of it vibrating in his bones, slow and deep like the river outside, like the pulse of the earth itself. And yet, it was not just a sound, it was a presence. Lyra's essence, that glimmer of light, surrounded him, a warmth that filled the corners of his mind and spread through his heart. She wasn't just in the song. She was the song. She was the space between the notes, the silence that made the music possible. As the last note lingered in the air, fading like the last star at dawn, Thistle found himself holding his breath. For a moment, the world outside the cottage seemed to fall away. The mist, the river, the darkened sky, all of it disappeared, leaving only the soft glow of the candle and the lingering warmth of Lyra's presence. "You see," her voice whispered again, "not from the stone, but from somewhere deeper, from within the very air around him. There are many songs in the world, but none are ever truly forgotten. They simply wait, waiting for someone to remember." Thistle's eyes fluttered open, though he wasn't sure when he had closed them. The flame of the candle had returned to its steady flicker, casting long shadows against the walls of the cottage. But something had changed. There was a new energy in the room, a hum that resonated just beneath the surface, like the quiet stirrings of the first light of dawn. "I'll remember," Thistle whispered, his voice soft, almost unsure. Lyra's essence shimmered, and in the silence that followed, the air seemed to pulse once more, as if the very stars themselves were listening. "Then you shall become the keeper," she said, her voice now more tangible, as if a soft breeze had carried her words across the room. "A keeper of forgotten songs. And I shall guide you." Thistle's heart quickened at the thought. A keeper. What would that mean? What would it require of him? But there was no fear. There was only a soft pull, a beckoning, as if this was the path he had always been meant to walk, even if he hadn't known it yet. He rose from his chair slowly, his feet carrying him toward the mantel where the tear-shaped stone lay. The firelight reflected in its surface, now glowing with a soft inner warmth, as though the stone itself was a part of the song. Thistle reached out, his fingers brushing the smooth surface of the stone, and as they did, a wave of light rippled through him. Images flickered behind his eyes, more stars, more songs, and a distant memory of a world full of light and sound. Lyra's presence filled the room again, as though she was now within him, as if her song had been woven into his own breath. "Listen carefully, Thistle," she said, her voice a melody in his mind. "The songs I've gathered, they hold more than memory. They hold power. And now, it is time for you to learn." And so, in the quiet of that room, with the soft glow of the candle flickering before him, Thistle began to listen, truly listen, to the song of the universe. The world outside remained still, cloaked in mist and shadow, but within the cottage, time seemed to fold in on itself. The air thrummed with an ancient resonance, the song of the universe weaving its way into the very fabric of Thistle's being. He could feel it within him, a quiet hum, like the faint pulse of a heart long forgotten, yet somehow familiar. Lyra's voice, no longer just a whisper, but a presence, seemed to echo all around him. "The first song," she said, and there was a certain warmth to her tone, as if she were guiding him through a doorway to a world he had always known but never seen. "It is the song of the river." Thistle closed his eyes again, the world around him softening, becoming distant. He imagined the river outside, the soft rush of water, the smooth stones beneath its surface, the gentle flow that had been here long before he arrived and would remain long after he was gone. He could hear the river now, not in the distant way it usually sounded, but as though it was speaking to him, its rhythm aligned with his own heartbeat. The melody formed in his mind, not as a melody of sound, but as a sense of movement. The river didn't sing with instruments. It didn't hum. It moved. It swirled. It breathed in waves that rose and fell, one after another, like the deep breath of the world itself. Thistle's mind followed the flow, his thoughts carried downstream as the song built within him. It was no longer just a memory or a feeling. It was real. It was living, pulsing with the river's life force. He felt his connection to it deepening, like roots reaching down through the earth to touch the water's edge. He opened his eyes, and the room seemed brighter somehow, filled with an ethereal light. The stone on the mantel glowed softly, as if it had absorbed the essence of the song and was now reflecting it back in a new form. The warmth of the fire grew, not in heat, but in light, a gentle illumination that filled the space with the presence of something ancient and wise. "This," Lyra said, her voice clear and steady, "is the song of continuity. The river flows, and with it, all things move forward. Time may still, but the river continues." Thistle nodded, though the weight of her words settled deep into his chest. The river never stopped. It carried with it all that had been, all that was, and all that would be. In the same way, the songs she had collected were not bound by time. They were alive, waiting to be remembered, waiting for someone to bring them back into the world. "There are other songs," Lyra continued, "waiting for their time to be remembered. Songs of fire, of wind, of the sun and moon, and even of silence. But each song is different, and each carries its own truth." Thistle felt his breath quicken. This was no small thing. Lyra was asking him to remember, to listen, not only to the song of the river but to all the songs of the world. To hold them, to cherish them, and to share them with the world. "I'm ready," he said, his voice steady but filled with awe. He didn't fully understand yet, but he felt the call, as if the very essence of the universe was pulling him forward, asking him to take this first step. To listen. And as he spoke, the air shifted once more. The flame of the candle flickered and danced, casting shadows that seemed to stretch, to grow, to transform before his eyes. The room around him blurred, and then, in an instant, he was no longer sitting in the cottage. He stood beside the river, its waters flowing gently at his feet, the cool mist rising from the surface, carrying with it the faint, comforting scent of earth and water. Lyra's voice was now a soft breeze, weaving through the trees. "Listen, Thistle. Hear the song of the river." And as he stood there, his heart beating in time with the river's flow, he heard it, the quiet, constant hum. It wasn't just sound. It was everything. It was the rustle of leaves in the trees, the whisper of the wind, the ripple of water over stone. It was the sound of life itself. It was the song of everything that had been and everything that would be. Thistle breathed in deeply, letting the song fill him, let it become a part of him. It wasn't just the river. It was the universe itself, and it was calling to him. He could feel it, deep inside, the pulse of existence, the heartbeat of the world. And in that moment, Thistle understood. This was not just about remembering songs. It was about becoming them. It was about letting the world's music live within him, letting it guide him, shape him, and, in turn, share it with others. The song of the river would not be the last. It was only the beginning. As the mist swirled around him and the light of the stars above brightened, Thistle knew his journey had just begun. And he was ready. Ready to listen. Ready to remember. Ready to sing. And, somewhere in the depths of the universe, Lyra smiled. "Remember," she whispered softly, "the songs are never truly lost. They are always waiting to be sung." As Thistle stood by the river, the song of the water echoing in his heart, a sense of peace washed over him. The mist swirled around him, and the stars above seemed to pulse in rhythm with the river's flow, as if the entire universe were attuned to this quiet, eternal song. But then, as if a subtle shift occurred, the song of the river faded into the background, and something else began to stir. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves of the trees and carrying with it a new melody, one that felt sharper, more urgent. It was a different song altogether, one he hadn't expected. Lyra's voice, no longer just a whisper, but an actual presence in the air, spoke softly but with purpose. "The next song," she said, "is the Song of Fire." Thistle felt a sudden warmth around him, not from the flame of the candle, but from an inner spark, deep within his chest. He took a step forward, his feet pressing against the earth, feeling the heat of the land beneath him. The wind shifted again, and in its wake, the sound of crackling flames filled the air. The trees surrounding him seemed to tremble, their branches bending toward him as though they were listening. The sky above turned a darker shade, the stars now distant flickers amidst an ever-deepening blue. "Fire is life," Lyra's voice continued, "but also destruction. It is the pulse of the earth, the heartbeat of the forge, the spark that begins everything and the flame that ends it. To understand fire, you must understand both creation and loss." Thistle's eyes widened as he felt a sudden heat rise around him. The ground beneath him felt alive, as though the earth itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to ignite. In the distance, he could see flickers of light, small sparks rising into the air like embers dancing into the sky. For a moment, Thistle hesitated. The Song of Fire was powerful, intense, a force that could not be controlled or tamed. But he knew, as Lyra's words settled into his mind, that this was another piece of the greater whole. The river had shown him life's unbroken flow. Now, the fire would show him its opposite, the inevitable moments of transformation, of change, of the necessity of destruction in the cycle of all things. He reached out with his senses, and the world shifted around him. The ground cracked beneath his feet, and a small flame flickered to life before him. It was nothing like the quiet flame of the candle. This was wild, untamed, alive with energy. The flame swirled and spiraled in the air, twisting upward in a brilliant dance. He stepped closer, feeling the pull of it. The fire didn't burn in the way he expected. Instead, it wrapped around him like a living thing, caressing his skin, feeding him warmth without harm. It was as if the fire recognized him, acknowledging his presence as if it, too, had been waiting for this moment. "The fire," Lyra's voice whispered, "will teach you to create, to build, but also to let go. To understand the fleeting nature of all things. You must learn the delicate balance between holding and releasing." Thistle closed his eyes, letting the warmth envelop him. He could feel the pulse of the fire now, its rhythm aligning with the beat of his heart. The flames danced higher, weaving around his body like ribbons of light, and for a moment, he felt as if he was one with them, part of the fire, part of the earth, part of the rhythm of the world. It was then that he understood. Fire did not seek to destroy simply for destruction's sake. It was not malicious. It was a force that cleared the way for new growth, for new beginnings. Without fire, there could be no forge, no creation of new things. And yet, it was always fleeting, always a reminder that nothing lasts forever. In its dance, there was both beauty and sorrow. Remember, Lyra's voice echoed once more, soft as the wind, fire as a teacher. A fleeting one. It will burn bright, but it will not wait. You must take from it what you need, then let it go. Thistle opened his eyes, the warmth of the fire still lingering within him. He could feel the connection between the river and the fire now, a balance, the stillness of the water and the fierce energy of the flame, both essential parts of the whole. Neither could exist without the other, and together, they created something far greater than either on their own. He took a deep breath, knowing the Song of Fire had not been an easy lesson, but it was a necessary one. The world needed both creation and destruction, both stillness and movement. And he, Thistle, would carry these lessons with him as he moved forward. But even as he stood there, wrapped in the warmth of the fire's song, a new sensation tugged at the edge of his awareness. A soft whisper in the air, the faintest stir of something, another song. Lyra's voice, now almost a breath, spoke again. There is yet more to learn. The next song awaits. Thistle closed his eyes, ready to listen. Whatever came next, he knew he was prepared. For the songs were not just echoes of the past. They were lessons for the future, pieces of a puzzle that, once understood, would reveal the truth of the universe itself. And as the flames slowly began to settle, Thistle knew one thing above all: he was ready. As the fire's warmth began to fade, and the last embers of the Song of Flames flickered into the cool air, Thistle found himself standing at the edge of the river once again. The warmth of the fire still lingered within him, but now, a different kind of stillness had settled in his chest. He could feel the connection between the river and the fire, a harmony, a balance between creation and destruction, between stillness and movement. And it was not yet finished. Lyra's voice, soft and ever-present, whispered in the breeze, "You have learned the Song of Fire. Now, listen. The next song comes from the wind." Thistle closed his eyes, and the world around him seemed to shift once more. He could hear the distant rush of the wind, carrying with it the sounds of faraway places. It was a restless sound, the call of something that moved constantly, that could not be contained. The wind was the messenger, the carrier of stories, the harbinger of change. But this was no ordinary wind. It was the song of the wind, the very breath of the earth, moving through the trees and across the water, calling out to Thistle. The air thickened around him, and the song began to take shape, swirling in patterns that only he could hear, yet felt deep within his soul. The wind, Lyra continued, is the song of freedom. It moves across the world without ever stopping, without ever settling. It carries with it all things, ideas, dreams, memories. It never stays in one place, never holds on to anything. It is both everything and nothing, a force that connects, but does not bind. Thistle felt the pull of the wind then, not as a physical force, but as a subtle invitation. The wind beckoned him to follow it, to go wherever it went, to feel its untamed freedom in his bones. He took a deep breath, and in that moment, the wind seemed to rush around him, lifting his hair, swirling the leaves in the trees. The river beside him joined in, its waters whispering as the wind pushed across its surface. He could feel the song of the wind now, not as a sound, but as a sensation, a lightness, a lifting of the spirit. The wind did not seek to control, to hold, or to possess. It simply moved. It went where it was needed, touching all things without ever truly becoming them. It was the ultimate expression of freedom. Thistle closed his eyes, and the wind seemed to wrap around him like a cloak, swirling through his body, carrying away the last remnants of hesitation, of fear. It filled him with a sense of possibility, a feeling of being connected to the world without being tied down to it. It was the song of movement, of change, of transformation. "Do you hear it, Thistle?" Lyra's voice asked softly. "The wind carries all things. It brings life and it takes it away. It whispers secrets and it erases them. It is the endless cycle of beginnings and endings." Thistle nodded slowly, the wind lifting his thoughts, letting them drift away, one by one. He understood now that the wind was not just a force of nature. It was the embodiment of change, of everything that moved through the world, whether seen or unseen. It was the constant presence of transformation, of the world in motion. "The wind," Lyra continued, "teaches you to let go, to embrace change, to allow things to pass through you without clinging. The river flows and the fire burns, but the wind? The wind moves on, never staying. It teaches you to release, to be free." Thistle's heart swelled with the wind's song, a song of release, of shedding the weight of the past, of embracing the unknown with open arms. The wind did not care for what it left behind. It only cared for what it could carry forward. As the wind began to slow, a new presence touched Thistle's awareness. He could feel it, soft and quiet, like a breath against the skin. It was the next song, and it came from somewhere deep beneath him, from the very heart of the earth itself. Lyra's voice echoed, low and warm, like the earth's own pulse. "Now, Thistle, listen to the song of the earth." Thistle's feet sank slightly into the ground, and for a moment, everything else fell away. The wind stilled, and the air became thick with a new sense of presence. The earth beneath him was not just soil or stone. It was alive, breathing with its own rhythm, pulsing in time with the beat of the universe. He could feel the deep, steady heartbeat of the earth beneath him, its slow, constant thrum. The song of the earth was quiet, but it was the most grounding of all. It was the song of roots, of stability, of time itself. It was the pulse that kept everything in place, the foundation upon which all life stood. "The earth," Lyra whispered, "is the song of roots. It is where all things begin and where they return. It holds the stories of all who have come before, and it will carry the stories of those yet to come. The earth does not move quickly, but it does not forget." Thistle stood still, listening to the pulse beneath him. He could feel it in his bones, in the deepest parts of his being. The earth was not just a place. It was a memory, a keeper of all that had ever been. The songs of the river, the fire, and the wind, they all had their places, their time. But the earth held everything. The earth was the foundation of it all. "This is the song of remembrance," Lyra said, her voice gentle. "The earth remembers all things. It is the keeper of history, the protector of the past." Thistle sank deeper into the earth's rhythm, feeling the weight of time press down around him. The earth was both ancient and young, holding the memory of all that had come before and the potential of all that would follow. It was a quiet song, a song of endurance. Thistle closed his eyes and felt the earth around him, felt the pulse that had shaped him and all things into being. And as the last remnants of the earth's song wrapped around him, Thistle understood. Each song was a part of the whole, the river, the fire, the wind, and the earth. They all played their roles, each with its own truth, its own lesson. He had felt the fire's intensity, the river's flow, the wind's freedom, and the earth's grounding presence. Each had taught him something new, something necessary. But there was one more song to hear. Thistle could feel it now, just beyond the reach of his senses. It called to him softly, a whisper that he could not yet fully understand. It was the song that would tie everything together, the song that would complete his journey. And as Lyra's voice spoke once more, she whispered, "The last song, Thistle. The Song of Silence. Thistle took a deep breath, ready to listen. The night deepened, and the world around him seemed quiet even further, as if everything, the river, the wind, the earth, the fire, had paused to hold its breath. For a moment, Thistle felt a weightless stillness. No sound reached his ears. The air was thick with expectation, yet there was no noise. It was the space between all the songs, the pause that followed every breath. This, Lyra's voice whispered, is the Song of Silence. Thistle didn't know how to listen to silence, for silence, by its very nature, was not something that could be heard. But he knew, deep within him, that this was the final part of the journey, to understand the silence that existed between all things, the pause between the heartbeat and the next, the stillness that existed before the world began its dance again. The silence stretched, deep and vast, like the dark sky above him, like the endless expanse of the stars. Thistle closed his eyes and allowed himself to fall into it. It was not an empty void, as he had once feared, but a space full of possibility, full of everything that could be. It was not absence, it was the foundation of all that was to come. Silence is not the absence of sound, Lyra's voice came again, soft and clear in the silence. It is the presence of everything that is yet to be spoken, of every thought that is yet to be born, of every story that is yet to unfold. It is the quiet knowing that all things are connected, and that in this stillness, we are all held. Thistle felt it now, not a void, but a profound sense of peace. He could feel the universe breathing, as though it had never stopped, though he had only just begun to hear it. The silence was not oppressive or empty, but full of meaning and presence. It was the space where everything began and ended, where all things were possible. As the silence deepened around him, Thistle understood it was the space that made the songs of the fire, the wind, the river, and the earth possible. It was the pause between the moments that allowed each of them to be. Without silence, there could be no sound. Without stillness, there could be no movement. Thistle opened his eyes and, for the first time, saw the world around him differently. The stars were no longer just points of light in the sky, but threads woven into a vast tapestry. The river, the wind, the fire, and the earth were not separate songs but parts of the same whole, connected by the silence between them, the space that held them all. Lyra's voice echoed in his mind, no longer just words but a deeper knowing, or resonance. You have heard all the songs, Thistle. But now you must create your own. He felt the weight of her words settle in his heart. The silence had filled him, and now it was his turn to make the music, to speak the stories that had been waiting within him all along. The songs of the fire, the river, the wind, the earth, and the silence, they were all within him, waiting to be given voice. And so, with the quiet hum of Lyra's teachings still in his ears, Thistle began to speak. His words were soft at first, like the first notes of a melody, unsure and tentative. But as the words came, he felt the rhythm building, the pulse of the earth beneath him, the wind swirling through his thoughts, the fire sparking in his chest, the river flowing through his soul. He spoke of the fire's warmth, of the wind's freedom, of the earth's quiet strength, and of the river's endless flow. He spoke of silence, the space between everything, and how it was where all things began and ended. He spoke of the connections between all things, the threads that wove the universe together. And as he spoke, the candle flame flickered, as if in response. The river beside him rippled with the echoes of his words, the wind began to stir again, and the earth seemed to hum beneath his feet. In that moment, Thistle knew that he had found his place. He was part of the song, part of the silence, part of everything. The stories, the songs, they would never end. They would continue, forever, in the silence, in the spaces between the notes, in the pauses that held the meaning of it all. Lyra's voice was the last to fade. Remember, Thistle, she said, her voice no more than a whisper now, the silence is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the moment when everything is possible, when everything is new. And as the silence embraced him once again, Thistle smiled, knowing that the song had only just begun. In the stillness of the night, Thistle's heart pulsed in rhythm with the universe. The silence, once a vast, unknown void, had transformed into something else, a space of endless potential. He understood now that each moment, every breath, was part of a larger symphony, a continuous flow of stories waiting to be told. As he sat by the river's edge, the stars above flickered softly, like distant notes in a celestial melody. The wind danced through the trees, whispering tales of lands far beyond. The fire's embers glowed faintly, casting shadows that seemed to move in tune with the quiet hum that had filled his soul. The earth beneath him held its ancient, steady pulse, grounding him in the knowledge that all things were part of something greater. Thistle stood slowly, his body feeling lighter than it ever had before, as though he had become one with the world around him. The river, the fire, the wind, and the earth all were part of him now, and he was part of them. The silence was no longer a waiting void but a deep well of understanding. He was ready to share the songs, ready to speak the stories. "Now, I can finally tell my story," he whispered into the night, feeling the weight of his words settle into the stillness. And so, Thistle began. His voice, steady and sure, carried the first notes of a new song, a song of everything he had learned. Of fire and wind, of earth and river, and of the silence that held it all together. His words flowed like water, like music, like light. Each story he told wove together the lessons of the past with the hope of the future. Every tale, every whisper, became part of the universe's great symphony. In time, others came. They came from distant lands, from places beyond the river and beyond the mountains. They came with their own stories, their own songs, and Thistle welcomed them all. Together, they created a tapestry of sound and silence, of fire and wind, of earth and sky. The stories flowed, one after the other, endless as the stars. And in the heart of the world, by the river that never ceased to flow, the flame of the candle burned bright, casting its golden glow on the tear-shaped stone that had once held Lyra's memory. It glowed now with something new, not just a memory, but a presence. Lyra had returned, not in form, but in spirit. Her song had not ended, it had simply woven itself into the greater harmony of the universe. Thistle smiled, his heart full, his voice steady as he spoke the final words of his tale. The songs never end. They only change. And in the silence between them, we find the meaning. And so, the night continued, with stories told in the soft language of the stars, the river, the wind, and the earth. They were no longer separate. They were all one, all part of the same song. The silence that had once seemed like an empty space was now the most profound music of all. The space between the notes, the pause between the stories, was where everything truly lived. In that silence, there was peace. And in that peace, there was endless possibility. And so, the story finds its rest. Like the final flicker of a candle or the last whisper of a dream. If sleep has found you, stay there. If you're still awake, let the quiet keep you company a little longer. Thank you for sharing this night with us. Until the next tale. Stay gentle. Stay dreaming. Stay listening.